yet another false dawn is breaking over at the BBC by the sounds of it.
Oh, yes. So BBC plans to build diverse workforce to fight off liberal bias claims. So there's... I mean, this is the thing that keeps going on, it keeps coming back, is that left-wing will accuse the BBC of being too right-wing, and then right-wing will accuse the BBC of being too left-wing. So the idea to then come up with people, basically, that are poor, I think is what they want to do, that somehow is going to solve the problem. Yeah. They want more working-class poor people.
Yeah, and they also want to represent a wide range of views and perspectives, and they're saying they want to have a process that ensures they hire those people. Why not just hire them? Also, I suspect many of them are there but afraid to speak out. And for what I've learned speaking to BBC employees is that it's just sort of known that you can't really say this stuff, but everyone knows what your views are, but it's just not really, you're not able to really say it, because everyone knows what the BBC are. They're sort of globalist over nationalist, they're Remainer, they're woke on sort of social issues. Everyone knows what they are. They're pro the COVID narrative. And now Nick Robinson just had this thing where he said that partisan channels like GB News risk causing impartiality problems, as if anyone thinks the BBC is still impartial. It's so absurd. Just today, Carl Benjamin was totally smeared by Mariana Spring on her podcast, and he just listed all the factual inaccuracy of the programme. So she's there as part of BBC Verify to check misinformation, whereas she's producing her own misinformation.
But I mean, my feeling with the BBC, with the news department, which is obviously the most important thing, I mean, certainly if you listen to things like Woman's Hour, if you ever hear those on the radio, or the things that tend to get focused on Front Row or whatever, there is a certain kind of Guardian reader sort of bias. But it's the news department that is obviously most important, and I don't think you could accuse them very often of misreporting or giving misinformation. It's just where their focus seems to fall. It's what kind of stories they tend to kind of, forefront, really.
Did they represent the Leave position fairly? Did they represent the vaccine sceptic position? Did they represent the lockdown sceptic position fairly? I don't know.
Not at all, because that
did terribly well.
No, they absolutely didn't, because there's a lockdown sceptic and there's a vaccine sceptic. Then I was very aware, being on the other side, that it was.
And also, it's quite interesting as well.
Your views were not allowed, because I was asked to do certain things on BBC and wanted to say certain things and was suggested maybe not.
And I also think they have a tendency of almost pantomimically exaggerating the both sides thing. So they will say, we're talking about climate change. We've got in a scientist from the governmental, the meta studies or whatever, that say it's definitely happening. And then on the other hand, we will have Nigel Lawson or whatever, who everyone on the left regards as a sort of clown-like figure, rather than somebody who's actually a serious voice against this sort of thing. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways in which they can just subtly, exude a certain amount of bias without ever actually being pinned down.
Yeah, and it's clear they didn't like Corbyn either, so I do accept that some of the further lefties are like, well, they hate Corbyn. And that seemed to be true as well. They're sort of, we can tell they're sort of Remainer bias, liberal lefty, but it's not, they obviously don't like the Corbyn side either, or the right. They just like their little weird metro blob thing.